Okay, welcome everybody to this exciting knowledge session on fundraising hosted by the Rockefeller Foundation. My name is Victor Kinda and I will be your moderator today. Please note that this event is being recorded, and by participating, you show your willingness to be recorded. So to kick things off, I'd like to share with you an interesting proverb. I don't really know its origins, but the way it's dominates is timeless. So the proverb says this: there's no shame in not knowing. The shame lies in not finding out. So there's no shame in not knowing. The shame lies in not finding out. This message is very appropriate in today's context, and I'd like you to keep it in mind as we hear and learn from the candid experiences of innovators at the intersection of agriculture and energy. In the course of this session, we invite you to use the chat function, or rather the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens for any questions or comments. And remember to indicate who your question or comment is addressed to. So I'd like to start. We're going to have a short presentation on the screen. Let me sort this out. Okay, so as that is sorted out, I can maybe briefly speak to what we expect to go over today. So I'm going to take the next 5 or so minutes to frame and introduce the agenda. And thereafter, we'll get a chance to hear from our very distinguished speakers today and engage with them later on in the Q&A session. So
hello, sir. Sorry, I'm getting in late after another session. One of the interpreters, would you kindly assign me?
Okay, Ross, could you see to that?
Of course.
Great, thank you. So now, just jumping straight to this. This picture here is a nice segue to what our meeting is about today. This is a common scene in rural Africa and something that reminds me of my own village, and something that a lot of people are very familiar with. Common as it is, this is not.
Alors c'est quelque chose de très commun.
Yeah, so common as it is, this is not a good picture. These children here who should be in school spend time collecting water instead, and yet they're unable to study at night after their chores are done. I'm sure for a lot of us that grew up in rural Africa, we can relate to this, and it's time that we take action to change it. Today, about 840 million people live without electricity, and hundreds of millions more struggle with erratic and limited service. And just as a matter of fact, I don't know if you knew this, but nearly 8 in 10 rural households in sub-Saharan Africa lack access to electricity. 8 in 10 households. And of course, as you've seen in the previous picture, the results of that can be tragic. And that was just one example. These communities face economic stagnation, agricultural stagnation. Women and children in these communities deal with unlit and unsafe streets. Medicines and food spoil and are wasted due to lack of refrigeration. On the other hand, high-income economies all run on electricity. It powers buildings, industries, everything. But most of this electricity is currently derived from dirty sources that pollute and fuel climate change. In fact, energy use now accounts for 3/4 of global greenhouse gas emissions. Meanwhile, low-income countries have been largely locked out of development. They are spending more on servicing debt than on education, healthcare, or infrastructure. They're energy poor, and energy poverty is poverty. The challenge these low-income countries have is they have to leapfrog past this reliance on dirty fuels like coal and oil, and instead harness the power of renewable energy to drive socioeconomic development. And this is essential to achieving UN SDG 7, which is a prerequisite to eradicating poverty itself, as well as achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Now, the majority of those who live without access to electricity are in rural areas. Agriculture is their main source of food and income, and yet agriculture stagnated for decades in these areas. This is something that electrification can change. At the foundation, our vision is to galvanize a transformational shift in energy investments towards distributed renewable energy, or DRE as we call them. This will electrify communities, create jobs, sustainable livelihoods, and build a low carbon future. Bringing electric lighting into homes is just one small step. And the real potential of electricity extends far beyond this. And that's where productive use comes in. Our goal is to secure for 1 billion people a new productive rural energy minimum of 300 kilowatt hours per capita. And we want to achieve this through the development of a range of DRE solutions that can deliver productive power. These solutions include mini grids, standalone productive use systems, C&I systems for SME clusters and marketplaces, etc. We define productive use as the use of energy that increases income and productivity and improves social economic conditions. It powers appliances and machines in homes, farms, and shops. Its potential in rural Africa is enormous, where it enables businesses of all kinds to launch and grow, employing youth and boosting rural economies. Whilst this definition of productive use is not limited to agriculture itself, as you will see and hear, the impact it can have on transforming rural food systems is mind-blowing. Productive use applications are already transforming agriculture in Africa, and examples include in areas such as irrigation, cold storage, agro-processing, livestock and poultry farming, small-scale manufacturing, and many more. And these applications are complementary to and very essential in making mini-grid development commercially viable in rural areas. Without them, electricity consumption remains too low, thereby making the cost per unit too high, and this discourages uptake and investment. The problem, though, is that both mini-grid development and productive use applications have been far too slow to come online, and the main bottleneck is limited capital investment. Millions are being invested where billions are needed. If there's one message to take home, this is it. Millions are being invested where billions are needed. Today, we'll hear from 4 entrepreneurs whose productive use of renewable energy is transforming life in rural Africa. They're going to tell us about their work, their fundraising journey, and the lessons they've learned along the way. As you listen to their stories, imagine what more can be done. There are literally thousands of ways to accelerate clean energy access through productive use. The lessons they'll offer are applicable not only to SMEs looking to take the same path, but should also be invaluable feedback to investors and funders as we seek to scale this sector. I now hand over to my first speaker, Samir Ibrahim, who is the CEO and founder of Sun Culture. Welcome, Samir.
Thanks so much, Victor, and thank you for having me and for hosting this event. I think focusing this on fundraising is quite smart and quite interesting, so thanks for taking a unique perspective on this as well. I'm going to start just by introducing myself and sharing a bit about what we do very quickly, and then I'll jump into the fundraising challenges, lessons learned, etc. So my name is Samir Ibrahim. I'm the CEO and a co-founder of Sun Culture. We are a climate tech platform for emerging markets that brings affordable and renewable distributed energy to smallholder farmers. Our model combines technology, services, and financing, and we believe that you can combat climate change and energy poverty and solve the food crisis by using distributed renewable energy. And that's reflected in our vision, which is officially to build a world where people can take control of their environments in rewarding and sustainable ways. One of the most exciting parts about our business over the last 18 months during the pandemic is while in Kenya, 90% of farmers have reported losing money during the pandemic, almost 90% of our farmers have reported increasing their incomes, and 95% have reported improving their quality of life. So this just sort of reiterates the need to do more and to do more faster. In terms of fundraising, we've had good success fundraising across the capital stack, but it's certainly come with some challenges. First, on the equity side, I think because venture in Africa is fairly new, a lot of investors don't have venture investment experience or operating experience. And as a result, the process takes much longer than it should. And the way that we account for this and I suppose overcome this challenge is by planning that our equity fundraisers will take 12 months. I think that all investors would agree that they would rather me and our senior team focusing more time on operations, but the sad reality is that fundraising takes too long. I think it's because diligence takes too long. On the donor side, I think we're at a point where we need larger tickets going towards really moving the needle. I don't think we need to get rid of smaller grants, but I think we need more ecosystem level grants to the tune of $100 million, like what the MacArthur Foundation does. I think there needs to be a bit more coordination amongst donors so that we can focus on taking solutions that have proven track records and help them scale quickly. And I think a lot more impact will be had doing that. In terms of lessons learned, I have two lessons learned, one for SMEs on the call and the other one for funders. For before they ask them, so just be super prepared. And I think for funders, I think it's just move quicker. I know that it's hard to move quicker. I know that it's tough in fairly new markets where you're investing in sort of first of its kinds businesses. You're taking sort of first mover disadvantage. But I think you can take some lessons from some of your emerging market peers in whether it's India or in China, Indonesia, Brazil. They're all moving fast while being able to invest in emerging markets. So I think there are a lot of lessons to take from there. And then looking into the future for Sun Culture, I see distributed renewable energy, specifically solar plus battery, being at the center of agriculture. So both production, processing and storage, home and mobility. It's not enough and it's not sufficient to think about these intersecting sectors in silos. And I see Sun Culture being an important part of this transition. For now, we're focused on expanding into new markets. We're the largest distributor of solar water pumps for smallholder farmers in Africa, but we need to do what we're doing 1,000 times more than what we're doing right now. So we're focused on that. And then we'll focus on using our platform to add more value to our customers, whether it's by launching new business lines or by partnering or acquiring parallel businesses. We'll launch another equity fundraise at the beginning of next year. We'll raise $50 million and we'll use that money to scale into new markets. And really looking forward to hearing the rest of the conversation and happy to support in any of the thinkings for the SMEs or funders along the journey. Thanks, Victor.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you, Samir. My next speaker is Michael Bruni, who is the Chief Commercial Officer at Inspira Farms. Michael, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. And on the fundraising, I'll try to build on what Samir was saying, which it's something I share. So good morning, everyone. Michele Bruni. I'm one of the co-founders of Inspira Farms, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer. Inspira Farm designs, manufactures, installs and services high efficiency, interconnected and modular post-harvest and cold chain solutions for fruit and vegetables currently in 10 African countries. we support our customers that are largely agribusinesses to sell more by reducing losses at higher prices, increasing shelf life, providing them with more knowledge through access to data and at a lower cost. We range from very small solutions of kind of 5 tons per cycle to over 2,000 tons per cycle. What we're trying to address are really macro problems that are related to losses, which in a lot of the chains in which we work range from 30 to 50%, and as well with the emissions related to that. Post-harvest losses account for roughly 3.5% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And to have a reference to that, that is double of the aviation industry. And that requires a lot of investment that should be deployed quite quickly. As well, though the infrastructure, the cold chain infrastructure in sub-Saharan Africa is extremely weak. Only 4% of agribusinesses have access to cold chain compared, for example, to the 97% that you might see in Europe. At the moment, we see 3 key drivers for our business that are related to the increase of exports of high-value crops from sub-Saharan countries to high-value markets, foreign ones, the consolidation of retail and wholesale serving growing urban areas and growing middle class in sub-Saharan Africa that requires that stabilizing of shelf life and import replacement. I mean, one clear example, I think, is Senegal, that could be self-sufficient in terms of potatoes production, but given the absence of storage, still imports over 200,000 tons of potatoes from the European Union. Now, having said that, we have done multiple rounds of equity, looking more at the fundraising, and as well raised debts to provide finance to our customers and different type of grants. I share what Samir was saying, both in terms of scale and as well in terms of speed. And I think it's our experience as well. I would probably consolidate or the 3 lessons learned that I would like to share with with companies that might be at an earlier stage. I would say that the first one is really try and lead the process. You might be facing multiple investors that might be willing to collaborate on the same round. It is essential that you try and lead that process and align them. I think that you need to try and do a very basic or simple test, which is double the time to break even, double the budget that you might need to get there, and see if it still makes sense. And then the last one, which at times is the most painful one, try and manage your time. For us, one of the things that now we laugh about, but is that to review an investment contract, it might take much more than it takes in terms of time delivering the largest projects you've delivered. And so I think it is fundamental to manage those processes. And lastly, on grants, I think that scale and aligning the grants not to the scale of the actors already present in a given market, but to the scale of the problem should be the way forward. As for Inspira Farms' own plans, we're gonna go for a C series in mid to late 2022 with the objective of increasing our presence in most of the markets in which we are, and scaling up around anchor countries that at the moment are Kenya for East Africa, Zimbabwe for Southern Africa, and Ghana for West Africa. And looking forward to the discussion, the Q&A session as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michele. So I just want to make one reminder to our audience. If you have any questions, any comments, we will have an opportunity to go through those in a Q&A session shortly. So I encourage you to type that up using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. After our last speaker has spoken, we'll go through those and provide answers to your questions. So with that, I hand over to my next speaker, who is Matt Carr. Matt Carr is the CEO and founder of AgSol. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Victor. Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me today. Victor, can you please put up the first slide, please? Unlike Samir and Michele, I'm going to run through a short deck. So the first part of my, the first kind of half of this presentation is just going to let you guys know what AgSol's about, because it's very probable that you don't know what AgSol's about, and then the second half is going to be on the fundraising aspect. So just AgSol's based in Kenya, and we're about helping farmers access more convenient and better milling services. So, you know, this is the problem we're looking at and trying to solve. Smallholder farmers need to mill the staple foods that they depend on. It's a task that's always falls on the shoulders of women. And the only solution out there is a diesel mill. And women walk miles to get, with heavy sacks of grain on their heads or shoulders, to get to these diesel mills. But here's the problem, you know, diesel mills are large, expensive machines. They've got really high operating costs, and therefore they only make sense in these larger centers or villages. So for the majority of people that live in rural areas or more dispersed communities, they're walking really long distance to access this essential services. This is not an insignificant problem. Collectively across Africa, women waste over 40 billion hours each year just walking to and from a diesel mill. Just to give you a bit of context on that, 40 billion hours is the full-time workforce of the UK or England for a year. So you can just imagine what could happen, you know, in Africa if we could start to unlock some of that time. Next one, please, Victor. So for this reason, AgSol's been working on developing a solution that makes sense in the market. This is our latest product, the micro mill. We've been working on this particular product for 2.5 years. Some of the key benefits of the micro mill: it can be powered by standalone solar, mini grids, grid, or even e-bikes. It's super easy to use, so you don't need any technical skill, so anyone can start a milling business. It's cheaper than a diesel mill, a fact, and that's in solar format. So that's a fact made possible because the micro mill is the most efficient small mill at converting energy into flour, or animal feed. It can make animal feed as well. And because there are no operating costs, it's like fuel or oil or engine maintenance, all the revenues generated is essentially profit. So compared to a diesel mill, for every kilogram of flour produced, it's 60% more profitable. Next slide, please. And because the micro mill is one, affordable, it's easy to use, and a pure profit generator, it's now viable, serving a much smaller customer base. So that then means we can create a dense network of profitable essential services, milling stations, and that means women can stop wasting so much time. Next one, please, Victor. Look, I won't dwell on this one too much, but again, I said at the beginning, you know, this problem is big, and you know, and the opportunity is big also. You know, just in the 9 East African countries highlighted on that map, there's 24 million tons of maize that's milled at village scale diesel mill each year. That's a lot of maize. I did the numbers actually. It's 13,000 Olympic swimming pools full of maize. So to do that, there's 500,000 diesel mills. And it's a big market for off-grid solar milling machines like ours, to the tune of $60 million USD or above. Next slide, please. So, kind of coming back around on the challenges that we've experienced in getting to where we are. We've got we're just to kind of recap. Obviously the opportunity for agro-processing is big. But why isn't anyone doing it? Well, the simple answer is it's really complicated. Milling is a really low value activity, so to get the performance and cost mix right is really challenging. And we've had to innovate essentially across a bunch of engineering disciplines to make a product that makes sense, even to the point of we've had to design and now manufacturing our own very specialized electric motor, such as a unique use case for efficient off-grid milling. So this is an expensive task. It's kind of high risk. It's expensive. The product development cycle of prototyping testing is there's long lead times on that. COVID slowed us down with product development by 50%, which costs us money. And then testing and developing new products for like this is expensive also. So you can probably get the gist of what I'm saying here, that to make really cutting edge and innovative products like this, it's expensive. And we haven't taken on any equity investment. We've spoken to pretty much all of them. No one will touch us. We sit in this category of too high risk, even though they love what we're doing and they can see the big picture. It's our product and market for our product is really just too untested for even the most risk kind of friendly investors to step forward. Next slide, please. Oh, this one's showing a bit peculiarly. Sorry about that. But look, just to say, we've been really fortunate as a company with fundraising, and it's been grant fundraising that's got us through to here. Equity is and debt even is part of our future, but at our stage of company development, that's not where we're at. We need to build more traction. So I want to use this opportunity as a shout out to some of our really awesome forward-thinking funders that have backed us and got Axel to where we are now. The sector needs more funders like this, to support this innovation. Like, let's face it, you're not going to get game-changing innovations on making safe bets. So, we need more, funding and finance to kind of, one, to enable, these new innovations to go from zero to proving themselves, and then the funding and finance to scale them, if we've got any chance to hit these SDGs. So my kind of anything that I could say here and now, like for the funders or influencers of funders listening to this, all I'd say is please think about how better you can support high risk and high reward innovations like Axel. These are not safe bets. They're the outside chances, but they're the moonshots. But if you get them, they have big impact potential. So that probably means you need to change the way you think about your project or funding evaluations. You probably need to loosen the reins and have a more interactive kind of fluid arrangement with your companies or portfolio companies. And for startups or other companies in the space starting up, all I can recommend from my experience is, just keep knocking on doors, find your champions, and just communicate clearly as best you can the problem and the importance of the problem you're trying to solve. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you very, very much, Matt. So again, just a reminder, if you have any questions, any comments, we have a very wonderful, distinguished panel here today, people who've walked the journey of raising or fundraising, people with very rich experiences to share. So if you have any question, both as an aspiring SME and importantly also as somebody sitting on the funding investing side, this is a good chance to pick up points, get feedback, and I invite you to post those questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. So finally, I'm going to welcome my last speaker today, who is Nora Magero, who is the CEO and founder of Drop Access. Welcome, Nora.
Thanks so much, Victor. I'm so grateful to be here today, and I really appreciate the words from my seniors who've gone before us, from Samir to Michael to Matt. But most important, I've really related to what Matt has spoken about, mostly because my organization, Drop Access, we are still at the startup stage. And what we do is we try to give rural smallholder farmers a holistic approach to solar pumping. So we go to irrigation schemes and we win them off from the diesel and engine pumps and get to them to solar pumping, but we go over and beyond to do water piping distribution infrastructure to the farm gate and also for water storage. And now we're actually exploring other models of like community cold storage facilities and a mini grid. Beyond that, we are also locally manufacturing low-cost solar refrigerators that can be used at households and also really the bottom of the pyramid, small-scale farmers who can't afford like larger systems for cold storage, but then they can afford like a household-level cold storage facilities, but then they're solar-powered. So now, just topping up what Samir really said, like for us as a startup, when we brought in the concept of building solar pumping and distribution network for farmers, those are high investments, the high capital investments. And when we approach investors out there, they couldn't really take us in. They were excited about the idea, but they couldn't really take us in. And what we learned is that we had to really create a lot of traction and really de-risk the work entirely, and also just to try to prove that there are several business models that can be gotten from building holistic solar pumping systems for farmers. And that took us quite a while. It took us quite an amount of money, and we bootstrap because for SMEs that are still starting up in the industry, bootstrapping is going to be quite common, and you should embrace it and just find innovative ways of trying to do the most with the little investment as much as you can, because as much as your idea is golden or it's amazing, or you've proven some concept that could work about it, when you approach an investor, they want to know how much work have you given it, how much money is going to generate, and really, is this something that is viable and sustainable? So that means you have to test the idea and you have to gain a bit of traction. And if you're financing it, or maybe you've gotten a small grant or just a small investment, or a donation, then it means you have to really work within a very tight budget, but ensure that you reach post-revenue as fast as you can and as the best way that you can. And I really resonated with what was said earlier on, that as a startup, you have to increase the break-even point, like double it, and also like really play conservatively when it comes to how much money is being invested and how much are you going to generate and how long it's going to take. Like you have to really work within conservative limits so that you're able to test through and actually don't fail. And another thing that that I think has afflicted us when it comes to manufacturing low-cost solar refrigerators for rural communities is that this is something quite new in the Kenyan space. And we have to deal with a lot of trust issues when it comes to technologies that are being locally manufactured here in Kenya, because the African space is a consumer nation, is a consumer continent. So we're used to technology being shipped in from the country. So we find some that are being locally made here. We have to gain a lot of trust by the public, trust by the investors that these things actually are built to last. And when they sink in their money, it's actually going to be worthwhile. And that means we've really struggled raising financing for us to be able to do a large-scale pilot for our refrigerators. Currently, we're running a small-scale pilot that we received from a few donations and grant funding. But then we need to move from that if you're looking at the future of expanding to the whole of East Africa and the rest of Africa, because really the sub-Saharan cold storage market, it's still something I can call virgin. It hasn't really been explored so much, and there's so much potential that lies into that. So for us as a startup, if we have upper hand in getting into that market as fast as we can, then that would be great, even for the future. And this is something Samir and his team does understand very well. But then it takes really a lot of work and quite amount of investment to prove this concept in the African space and to also be able to reach post-revenue. And we are at the stage of knocking really on so many doors. And it has taken us so much time even to close a financing round. It does really take a lot of time. And it even takes longer if this is an African-born innovation. and it doesn't really have so much backing from maybe development organization or multilaterals. If you have a limited space for support for your product, then it does really take a lot of time. So to me, I would call out investors to be considerate when they're doing the due diligence, and I don't know, take a leap and really just try to work with us startups and into ensuring that really our investments really come, the investments come to fruition, and we're also able to scale up the impact to far and wide areas. Now, for us, how we are overcoming these challenges right now of knocking on doors and doors being shut on our face is trying to partner as much as we can. We've realized we have limited capital. Our team is quite small, quite young. We are still building professionals who can actually work with us if we're seeing ourselves scaling to the rest of sub-Saharan Africa and even into Asia and other parts. So we have to work with a lot of partners on the outside, and it's really just agreeing on principle that this is going to work. And it's not really a guarantee that that SMEs or startups are always going to get partners to help them bridge that investment gap that they can't really get to. And also, what I've come to learn is that no matter how much or how grand you think the idea is, there's so much work that has to be put in before you really reach dream financing. You have to put in the work, you have to gain a bit of traction into it, and sink in a bit of investments from other sources. Also, you have to really plan ahead. Like for us, we want to do a large scale pilot for the solar refrigerators starting next year, but then I am really wishing we started to plan for it, the financing, the beginning of this year. But this came much, much later, and now it's affecting our timelines and how fast we really want to scale our cold storage into the African market. So I will tell starters and SMEs who are getting to the industry and looking into financing, start ahead. If you want to do it next year, start this year to try to raise for financing. Get which organizations that you can align your goal with, and you start a courtship period with them to really trust your idea, to trust you, and also to build it together. Then it will be much easier when you start and now to raise financing, and it will be much quicker. And also, other thing beyond building a team is also just testing out the model to really prove that it's viable, it's sustainable, and it's going to generate financing. What I've also learned again is at the end of every transaction is a human being. So there is you with your great idea, then there's the investor who is also a human being. So they need to trust your idea. They need to know that they're sinking in their money and it's going to generate revenue and there's going to be impact all over the world. So that really has to be it has to be clear. You have to communicate the impact that you're going to create for the general public clearly, but also you have to communicate how much this makes financial sense by building business models that actually work and testing them out in the market to prove that this solution that we're giving is going to generate revenue and create impact. So thanks so much, Victor. I'm so glad to be here and really listening to my seniors having this conversation. And there's so much I'm learning that is going to define how Drop Access grows its initiative 2022 going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Nora. Very, very wonderful discussion and presentation of your experience there. I hope we've all taken note. So now we move on to the Q&A session. So this is really, really the heart of this session today. I mean, you have these 4 wonderful entrepreneurs out here, and this is your chance to ask questions, you know, from them, to them, etc. Now, there are a few questions on the chat box. I'll start with the ones on the Q&A. And I see, Matt, you have already given a stab at them. So what I'll do is I'll put you on the spotlight, and maybe you can just talk through those very quickly for the benefit of those who've not read what's in the Q&A. So just Matt, over to you very quickly to answer the first question on fundraising being tedious, and then the question on the link between Agsol and e-bikes.
Sorry, that was for me. Yeah. Yeah, look, fundraising is super tedious. You know, for every 10 attempts, you kind of might get 1 or 2 if you're lucky. I think you know, having good people knowing what they're doing. You know, particularly at our level, and I can only speak from our own experience, and like our fundraising to date has been grant predominantly, because we don't have the business kind of traction model all in place to kind of to win equity investment or other capital investment at the moment. But having the right people who know how to do this is really important. Whether you have those people in-house or whether you kind of contract those kind of services, I think are really important. Otherwise, you can just waste so much time. You know, I think it was Michaela who was saying the same thing. It can be such a time suck doing this stuff. And also knowing when to walk away from an opportunity, like ideally sooner rather than later. You know, so doing that kind of go, no go assessment on an opportunity from the outset is really important. The second question about e-bikes. Yeah, well, look, you know, e-bikes is going to be a huge market in Africa. Like we're already kind of seeing the writing on the wall. And e-bikes can, for a mill like ours, can function as a mobile power platform to run it. You know, our mill is not so fussy about what power comes into it. It ultimately runs off a 48-volt supply, but we can put power conversion in front of it. Most e-bikes run off either 48 to 72-volt nominal. So we can just plug it into the battery of an e-bike. I hope though that answers those two questions.
Fantastic. There's a very interesting question from Kagwiria that's on the Q&A box right now. And this will need a response from each of you. And this is essentially, so I'll read the question as it's written. So African-born innovations take longer to fund. Why? So from each speaker, kindly share how we collectively can address this, or what one lesson you would share for successful resource mobilization. So yeah, so I think we just start in the same order as before. So Samir, Michele, Matt, and then Nora. Thank you.
So I think this is a huge problem, and I think this is a problem that the burden sits on a number of investors. That being said, I think there's a way to solve everyone's issue here. I think investors need to work a little bit more with earlier stage entrepreneurs to sort of, you know, investors pattern match often, and they pattern match to what they have seen be successful. I think the flaw here is that in these markets, there are not too many patterns to match to. So investors end up pattern matching to things in other markets. But I think that there's a way where innovations that are born on the continent can work with investors, so investors can better understand and share what is it that they need to see in order for these entrepreneurs to be funded, and the entrepreneurs can then learn from investors, this is what I need to do in order to be able to sort of be investable. So what do the documents need to look like? What does the financial model need to look like? And I think there just needs to be a little bit more dialogue. I do see this slowly starting to change. I've spoken to a number of investors who are taking a more hands-on approach to pre-seed and seed stage funding. A lot of investors are starting to work more closely with earlier stage companies to sort of help them get to the point where they can go and raise successful Series A, Series Bs, etc. So I do see the shift, but I really do think it comes with more dialogue and a different way of investing. It's a more operational and more hands-on and more supportive approach to investing at the much earlier stage to help build these businesses up to become much bigger.
Maybe I can complement. I agree on what Samir is saying, and I think it ends up or it boils down as well to not having enough market yet. So not enough data points, not enough not enough transactions to really have benchmarks translating into as well specific type of risk perception. I do think there is an additional point if we're talking about hardware. I do think that, for example, if we talk about financial innovations or innovations in the kind of ICT, IT they can be much quicker. On the hardware side, there is an aspect related as well to the supply chain management. And for me, there is 3 points there. One is availability and cost of components for hardware that is not always easy to source or to scale. Logistics, even more so after the COVID or during this phase of the COVID. And the third one is as well public incentives. I think we need to remind ourselves that most African countries have finished products that can access duty-free, while components that can be assembled or further processed in country that have high duty rates. And that as well is something that can have an impact on the development of innovations when we're talking about hardware. Thank you.
Thanks. I probably don't have a lot more to add. Just kind of echoing some of what's been said. I think applying the rule books or applying the rules from developed markets to markets like in Africa, less developed markets is a false and leads to a bunch of problems. You get companies and startups trying to present like these growth hockey stick kind of growth curves, which are really probably not going to be the reality when you're selling products to people living in poverty. Right? We're not selling to high net value individuals that have money to burn. So it's I think that's one problem, and I think again that then leads into like how investors are viewing these opportunities. Like if they are investing in really high impact ventures, like all the four of us on this panel today, that needs to be balanced with the very impact investing lens, and whether there's public funds, as Michele kind of suggested, to kind of offset that, or whether there's funds from kind of more of the donor community to de-risk other investors getting involved with that kind of more impact investing, then I think that's important for the future. Thanks.
I couldn't agree more. Like just to top up what has all been said, and I agree with all of you. Like Africa really needs to have more innovation that come into the market, especially hardware, that should be tried and tested and see what are we keeping and what business model that we can build on it, so that when investors are coming in, there is already an existing sort of template of what's the implication of these kinds of technologies in the market. And having more innovation tried out and tested in the market means more investors who are willing to take risk to invest in upcoming technologies and startups, so that now we get to accelerate these things and prove to the market that, hey, this works. These technologies that are born in Africa work. And I'm talking from a perspective of where we are building a fridge in Kenya, and the first thing that meets us is we don't trust your technology because we'd rather buy it from China or buy it from Taiwan, and it works equally the same, like it's refrigeration. And we can even make it much better, refine the idea, and even cause more impact. And like, I think somebody the one who said this, we need to have dialogues and communication just to really prove, or rather to just create a bit of comfort that, hey, you can equally adopt these technologies that are born in Africa and they work equally well. And that's going to take a bit of time or a bit of effort to ensure more people are adopting them, even if the high cost, then maybe setting up some offset programs to ensure that more people actually do test out these technologies in the market. Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Just being mindful of time, I'd like us to answer at least one last question. Then after that, I still encourage the participants to send questions. When this session is being recorded, obviously, and when that is shared, any questions that we didn't get a chance to go through here will be posted there along with the answers. So there's a couple of questions to Matt. I'll let you answer those on the chat. I'll go to the next question from Cyrus. And this question is, lots of impact investment opportunities have complex requirements that most startup SMEs find difficult to access. Where do such startups begin from to unlock such opportunities? So obviously, all of you were startups at some point. So I don't know who wants to take this question. Samir, Michele.
Maybe a very short contribution. I think that for me, that falls under my suggestion on lead the process. So have your own framework of addressing impact, maybe referring to one of the many ESG frameworks that are out there, and start to engage potential investors on that work. But I think that work should be done in parallel to the business planning, to the pitch deck, to your financial planning. You need to have as well your impact plan, and that will help reducing the transactional cost of engaging one or more impact investors.
Okay, thank you very much, Michele. I'll request anyone in the audience with any outstanding questions to type them in the Q&A box. We will not answer them today, but we will get the answers to those and share them along with the recording of this session. So in interest of time, I have to close the session. In closing this session, first, I'd like to thank our speakers today for taking time to share their experience with us, and to our audience also for engaging with our speakers, very candidly. We want to invite all of you to join with us in catalyzing the growth of a new economic sector, running on clean energy, developing rural economies, combating climate change, and generating unmatched socioeconomic benefits for people in rural Africa. To pave the way, the Rockefeller Foundation and the Kia Foundation have committed $1 billion to establish and launch a global initiative to end poverty, energy poverty, that is. You're going to hear about this in a different session this week, but this is important news. It's opening the door to private investors, to companies, to development finance institutions, and to others, to invest in companies like these that we've showcased today. Companies that are innovating at the nexus of agriculture and renewable energy. And the objective of what we are really asking of you is, together we can think and act constructively for a green and prosperous future. I thank you all for attending. I thank the audience for sparing time to attend this session, and especially again, thank our speakers here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So over to you, Rose.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.